Hi everyone, today I'd like to share the workbooks for brush tip pens. I have two new workbooks. This one is for large brush tip pens and this one is for small brush tip pens. You can find them at Michael's stores. Anyway, I want to show you a look inside and how you work with them and also the pens you use. So let's take a look at the large brush pen workbook just so you know how it proceeds. You start with basic strokes at the beginning, and then you study the lowercase alphabet, and then you practice the uppercase alphabet. So don't rush into the uppercase alphabet. It's a little bit too hard to work on if you're a beginner. There's a few pages of advice, and then you start the basic strokes and drills. So if you take a look, this one has been written on. I was at a trade show. You have in front of every practice sheet 3 pieces of tracing paper. 1, 2, 3. So what I recommend doing is, you don't have to write on this, but you can if you want to. You put down the first sheet of tracing paper and you work with that. When it's filled up, you can tear it off. I also have tracing paper pads that you can add extra later. So once you get used to the pressure of the brush pen doing up and down strokes, you proceed to the underturn, and then there's the overturn. There's 2 compound curves, and then you have your ascender and descender loop strokes, and last you have ovals. So there is a regular oval and then the reverse oval. All right, after this section, you move into the lowercase alphabet, and that's the same in this book as well. I do want to tell you that this is not an alphabetical book. You have the first 2 letters of the alphabet that are the easiest are the letters I and T. So let's just zoom in and see what that looks like. And on every page where you have letters in both of the workbooks, you start with a breakdown of the strokes, and then you put this breakdown together and you write them like that. For this workbook, the large brush pen workbook, you'll use the Dream pens, or you could also use the large brush tip pens from this deluxe lettering kit. So this is a canvas pen roll that's in Michael's stores as well, and it is an awesome place to start if you're an absolute beginner, because you have 3 large brush tip pens plus a large black brush tip pen, and then 2 smaller tip pens for the small brush workbook. So I will show you how to use the Dream pens in this for the letter I. I am going to actually move this down, sorry for the bump, and zoom in. And you'll see how this pen responds on this paper. So you have a light up stroke with the tip of the pen. Notice where I'm holding the pen, high on the barrel. And then for the downstroke, you push down, release before the bottom, and exit, and dot your I. So with these large brush tip pens and the Dream pens, they are actually quite stiff. If you find they're too stiff and you can't get that nice downstroke, let's look up here, and you're just getting a downstroke like this, I recommend you bending this and creating these teardrop shapes so that you flex and soften the nib very gently, and then you will find you can get a thicker downstroke when the nib is a little bit softer. I have a very light hand, so beginners like these pens because they're super stiff, but I do prefer a little bit of a softer tip, so I actually gently bend that tip, brush tip, and I showed that in my other video about these pens. So this goes back in the canvas case. I just want to take out the Dream pens as well and show you both tips in this workbook. So let us grab, let's take the pink one, because the Dream pen has 2 tips, and I get asked about the size. So the large tip is the same as this one that I just used from the Deluxe Lettering Kit. And the small tip is a little bit smaller. So let's see an example of a downstroke. There's my thick downstroke with the pink. And then you have the other side. It also flexes. See how much smaller it is? If you did want to use this other side in this workbook, you definitely can. You can actually use the Dream Pens in both workbooks, but I do recommend the other smaller brush tip pen for the small pen workbook. So let's get back to the workbook and how it's laid out. Like I said, you start with the easiest letters and you proceed to the most difficult letters at the end, which are your ovals. I do recommend you start out with and work on these simple strokes first. So the M, the N, the U, the V, the W, the X, and wait a while until you get those strokes really down pat before you move on to the loops, the ascender loops, and wait a little bit longer before you work on your ovals. The ovals do take a very long time to master, especially the reverse oval like the B and the P. So be patient, take your time, and you'll get there. Now here at the very end, the last part of the workbook, you have the uppercase alphabet. So you don't want to worry about the uppercase alphabet until further down the road. The larger the letter in the shape, the more challenging it is to draw. So you have to take your time and not jump into the capital letters right away. Just master your lowercase letters. So because this is much bigger, it's harder to manage, but eventually you'll get there. Now this part of the workbook is set up alphabetically. So you'll be able to move through it from A to Z, but you will notice there are certain letters that are easier. So if they don't have ovals, they're going to be easier than if they have ovals. The letter C is more difficult, the D is more difficult. So again, be patient with yourself and stay away from the oval letters and work on them last. Now let's take a look at the small brush pen workbook. It is set up exactly the same way. And this time we're going to take a look at how the Dream Pens work in here and also the small tip brush pens. So the small multicolor small tip brush pens come in 2 colors and you can use them in this small tip workbook. Now let's look at the difference in size. So you can see right away what a big difference there is in size. You can write bigger with the small brush tip pens, but it is, you know, they'll just be very thin lines. So let's zoom in, and you get your first tracing paper down. You don't have to start on the 3rd one, and this was done at the trade show. So you're going to go light up on the light up strokes. This is your starting point. Nice and slow. You can see where I'm holding my pen. That's always a big concern, where you're holding the pen. Most people who struggle with their brush lettering do not have a grip high up on the barrel. They're holding it like this. So get high up on the barrel to create your nice angle. And let's take a look at the downstrokes. You go top to bottom all the way down, top to bottom all the way down. And you push down and you get that nice thick downstroke. Here are the Dream Pens. Let's take a look at how they respond. So remember how we have the smaller tip here? This is a little bigger than this. It's bigger than the small tip. Here's a demo of that. So we go light up. Oops, sorry. We push down and push down. You can see the difference. Even when I'm pushing just a little bit, I'm going to be thicker than the small brush tip pen. So you could use the Dream pen in here. I do recommend you use the smaller tip pen. If you have the deluxe lettering kit, oops, you do have a medium and a smaller tip pen, that's this black one, that you can use in the book as well. So if you only want to get 2 items and one workbook, either workbook works with the deluxe lettering kit. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show you about the workbooks, and make sure I'm zoomed out, is I always recommend practicing on a flat surface. So you have a workbook with the coils, that's so lefties can use it as well, but you have this big edge as you're working. So I do recommend that if you want to, you can take these pages out completely. If you don't want to take them out, then fold your pad over so the bulk of it is above you, and then you have a nice flat surface here. So I have about 5 or 6 pages. You only need a few. On your flat table, you're at a table instead of in bed, and you're moving across, and you do not have an edge when you work on these strokes at the end of the page. So you have the workbooks, you have the pens, and then you have to practice. Well, what are you going to practice on? I do recommend, there are a number of practice pads in my line. There is the dot pad, there is a line pad, there's also a grid, a blank pad, another tracing paper, and a project pad. So for beginners, and actually most people, even professionals, they use guidelines. So please practice with the dot, the lined, or the grid. The line paper is set up exactly the same size as your large tip brush pens, or half the size of this is the small tip. Let's take a look. So I have my large brush tip pen on the Dream pen. Oh, I'm telling you about the surface of the table, and I'm not doing it myself. I'm angling this way. Lefties, you can angle it this way, whichever way works for you. I would take this paper out to get rid of that edge, but I'm not going to for this video. And then you're going to, I'll show you we'll do an L. Light up, turn, push, and exit. Do you see how I use 2 spaces? Now, here's your X height, right here. This size is your X height for your large tip brush pens. So if I was going to do my A, I'd be between those 2 lines. So this is a very nice practice pad because it has the bigger spaced lines that are wider for large brush tip pens. Now we can take the smaller brush tip pen and we will write half the size. So now our X height is about half of this. And you can make it smaller, but this is just the way I like it. So I would do my vowels like this. I could do my L would reach that height, but you definitely can write smaller if you like, and not follow the lines so exactly. There. Anyway, this gives you an idea of how to use the workbooks and how to start practicing your brush lettering and which pens to use. Thanks for watching.